creating your React project using your Vite, so this is the complete folder structure which is getting created. So yesterday we were talking about how do we build the files and what do you mean by package.json. Whenever you run any type of commands like npm run dev or npm run build, so what are the files are which are getting executed, how the build will be done, those things we are discussing. Okay, so we are going to each and every file. I think like dist is the folder, everyone is so clear. Yes, right? So at the same time, you see, okay, so dist is the folder what we have done, node underscore module we are done, where node modules is the folder. By default, all the node modules, whatever we install, those all will be automatically moving into node underscore modules folder. Okay. And what do you mean by public folder? The static files, your .html files and images, etc. also recommended. Otherwise, even in SRC also, we have something called as assets. So assets is also one of the folder where you can keep your CSS or your images. Okay. Yeah, so public folder is also done. SRC is the folder where you're actually keeping your source code of your React application, the components, the common things, etc. They'll be falling under the SRC. We will explore what all the things like app, these all things are there. We'll come to that later. Next, git ignore. Everyone is so clear? Yes, right? So there will be an entry. What all the files which you want to ignore when you are submitting the code into the Git. Okay, this is nothing to related to your React project, but it is recommended to keep so that all the files or the folders or extensions, anything you want to ignore to not to go with the Git, you simply add an entry here. Okay. And ESLint, I think we are not at, right? Index we haven't. Okay. On the top, package.json. So what is package.json? The file which will be having extra information of your current project, like your description. What is the description of your project? What is the title of your project? What is the version of your project? Is it a public project or a private project? On the top, who all are the authors and their contact details. Okay, at the same time, it is going to have some start script where whenever you say npm run dev, npm run build, what is going to be hit in the background, those all things will be added as an entry in your package.json itself. And on the top, we even discussed about that's it. I think like package log.json, you guys have asked it, but we haven't yet explained. Anybody have an idea what do you mean by package.log.json? Okay, so if you open this guy and another time package.json, it will not be by default created. We only see the package.json and package log.json. Anytime you want, you can delete it. When it is going to get created, whenever you say npm install on the project, whenever you say npm install, automatically package.json will package log.json will be created. Let's see this. Okay, package log.json automatically got created. So what is this package log.json? When you go into package.json, if you see here, how many dependencies we are depending on Bootstrap, React, and React DOM. Dev dependencies are these are. So totally we have almost 3 plus like 10 to 15 dependencies. 10 to 15 dependencies, what we are going to have. But when we go into this folder, okay, when we go into something called as node underscore modules folder, what is going to happen is you see there are n number of node modules, not just only 10 or 15 what we see, but other extra modules also got installed. Now the question is, you are installing the node modules, whatever we have added as a dependency inside your package.json, then how come this node modules folder is having too many node modules instead of just only one what we have installed, what we have added in an entry, instead all other things are coming. The reason is you might be depending on, say for example, if you go to your package.json, we were depending on React node module. Okay, we are depending on React node module. Go to the project. When you go into node module, you see there is something called as React node module which got installed. But once you open this node module, he will be having his own package.json. Okay, every module will have its own package.json. If I open their package.json, you see what all the dependencies they are going to have. This guy is not having much dependencies. You see, these all the server.js, these all things have been added. Okay. For example, if I go with any other module, for example, Babel is the node module what I'm going. Now, when I'm going over here, Babel itself is depending on a lot of things. For example, Acon. Okay, if I open their package.json, you see dependencies. This guy is also not having dependencies. Why so? Bootstrap. Let us see. Bootstrap dependencies. Yeah. So if you see here, Bootstrap we have installed. But when I'm going inside the package.json of your Bootstrap, you see what all actually the dependencies he is depending on. He is depending on some popper.js, rollup, so and so, so and so. Hell lot of dependencies he is going to have. So we are installing only Bootstrap, but Bootstrap internally depending on something else. You see like at the race at Astro.js, right? You see whether that got installed or not under this node module at the rate Astros. Where is that? It should be installed. Okay. Okay. Astros something is missing. I will check on that. But for example, if you see at the rate Babel, he has installed I mean, he is dependent on even that guy is also installed. Isn't it? So when you are adding an entry into the package.json, this is our package.json where we are adding an entry of 10 or 15 dependencies. But those 10 or 15 dependencies might be internally depending on some other 15 or 20 dependencies. And those guys internally might depending. So all those modules will be automatically installed. But when you open this package log.json, that guy will be having entry of every other node module, whatever it got installed. Okay, so before installing the node modules, what the npm install command will do is he will automatically create this package log.json and he will make sure all the entries, not just only user defined, but what all the internal dependency node modules, those entries also will be added as part of your package log.json. Okay, and this file every time automatically gets created when you run this npm install command. Are we clear? Okay, so this is about the package log.json, and again, package log.json is also not recommended to get into the Git folder. Okay, even that can be added as a Git ignore. Okay, so this is the package.json. So what are the folders or files we are left over with? Okay, another thing, README. So README is one of the very useful file, not at all mandatory, but what actually this guy will be helpful is what is your project is for. You say, for example, I'm going with something called as github.com. I want to search for one of the project, something called, I want to see Axios demo. I want to see like anything, any project which is related to some Axios, is someone has added or not. Chinese guys have added. Okay. Let us say something called as React sample. Okay, some React sample project. Do we have anything? So someone created auth samples, Spring Reactor sample, so and so, so and so. Now, when I'm going for this project, you see the very first file what I will be going is readme.md. Okay, so when I'm open this readme.md, this will help me to understand what actually the project is for. Okay, what actually the project is for, how do we start with, how do we end with, like every other information will be part of this. For example, if we go to web application node modules, you see here, any of the node modules, say for example, Babel is one of the like JavaScript compiler thing which will be useful. Now under this, I want to understand what actually this Babel project is. I don't have any idea. Under the Babel, some code frame is the node module what they are using. If at all I need to get some information, they will be providing some readme.md. It will not be compiled, but this will be showing some information like anytime you want to use this guy, what are the commands and what are the documentation. So for every other project, for example, if I go to something called React. Okay, under this, they are providing something called as README. So using this README, they are going to provide what actually the documentation of the current project is. Isn't it? It is not at all for the compilation, just for the sake of the developer. When developer gets into any of the node module, any of the project, to make them understand what actually that application is for, what are the minimum commands I need to follow to run this application, those all things will be added as an entry into your README. So if at all we want to give some information regarding our project, this is the thing we can go. Right now, they have added some information, but we can delete this. We can start adding about your project, what we are going to do. Clear? Everyone? Okay. Now, on the top, then what all the things we are pending? License, everybody, we already know that. Oh, sorry, not this guy. Okay. So README is done, package. Okay. The pending things are white config and ESLint config. Okay, package.json, and we were discussing about package.log.json. So what actually this file is going to have? List of all the entries for all node modules been installed for current project. Okay, so this is what your package log.json is going to do. And readme.md, what this file is going to have? Documentation and installation steps for current project. Okay, it's an optional. Okay, it's an optional. Next one is we have something called as eslint.config.js. So this is important at the same time, white.config.js. Okay, so what actually this ESLint? Everybody is so clear with the ES, right? ECMA standards. So this eslint.config.js is a file which will be providing the set of steps what your compiler need to follow, or set of files what I need to be considered while I'm executing your application. Okay, so if you go into your eslint.config.js, you see what actually he's saying. Boss, what type of files you're going to execute here? You might either go with a .js file or .jsx file. If I try to give any .ts files or tsx file, it'll automatically throw me an error here. Okay, why defaultly it has added JS and JSX? While creating the project, it was asking me, boss, do you want to go with the TypeScript or you want to go with the JavaScript? There I mentioned it as a JavaScript. So they automatically created this ESLint config.js saying that what is the place where you are what is the place, I mean, what type of files I need to go for execute. At the same time, what all the global ignores? It is saying that boss, dist is the folder what you need to globally ignore. Why the reason? Because when you're compiling it, after compilation, I don't need to check for all the ESLint errors, etc. here. So dist is the folder where we are going to hold the compiled version. Isn't it? So that is the reason you can just simply ignore the content what you have in your dist folder. At the same time, what all the extended files, what all the language option, currently what ECMA version you need to follow. I am following something called as 2020 version. At the same time, what is the ECMA? Anyway, latest it is mentioning ECMA features, source type, etc. So these all are the details what we are going to mention, which is going to help when you are compiling your React project. What standards of JavaScript I need to follow to execute your current project. That is part of your ESLint config.js. Am I clear? In the same way, what do you mean by white config.js? So white is a bundler. Under this, right now we have not mentioned anything, but what all the details we will be adding over here under this white config, we will be mentioning the plugins to be used while bundling. Okay. At the same time, default browser to be used while launching app. Okay, if you see, whenever you're saying like npm run build, it is automatically opening that in your particular browser. So it is taking the default browser as the current system's browser. For example, whenever I say npm run build, you have to open IE or you have to open Firefox, you have to open Safari Opera, that can be configured here. And even we can configure the port number, can configure port number where the app has to launch. Okay, so the plugins to be used at the same time. So right now it is simply saying like React is the plugin we can go for, but in future we will still extend this React config.js. Sorry, white config.js. So it is mainly whatever the bundler configurations we needed, those things will be added as an entry into your white config.js. Okay, under your ESLint config, um, used to mention the ECMA configurations to be used while debugging, not debugging, compiling application. Okay. So any questions with esconfig.js and whiteconfig.js? Is everyone good? I see some questions here. Sir, if I delete dev dependencies, is it is going to work under production? Okay. As I mentioned, right, Swati, this dev dependencies, if that would have been a dependency, for example, if you go into the package.json, when you go into the package.json, if these dependencies would have been necessary, that would have been added in the dependencies itself. There is a specific reason that these modules are being added as a dependencies. There is a specific reason these modules are added as a different entries, mentioning that these are not at all needed when it is executing inside your browser. These all are needed while you're developing the piece of application. Am I clear, Swati? But you rightly mentioned, even, I mean, deleting this not over here, it is in your current system, it is there. The place where it is executing, when it is executing inside the browser, these are all the things which are needed. When I'm minifying the process, I will be only including these modules, not all these dev dependencies. Okay. Madhuri, Enlight config. Do we have it? Are you mentioning about ESLint itself, Madhuri, or what is this Enlight? Okay, Ishwar. Regarding yesterday's class, my doubt is one project is built, final project is test. Once commit, I want to same modification my existing project after 1 month. Then when client requirement again, I did modified commit into dist. Did I take backup of old dist folder? Not needed, right? Dist folder is not at all the commit. I mean, I think Netaji has mentioned. So dist folder is never a commit. Dist folder is your deployable artifacts. Everybody, anyone have an idea of artifact? You know, whenever you go with the deployment process, right? CI/CD pipeline, we call it as in your real time. So what happens is when you take this project is never taken into the production environment. You know, when you go into your real time, there are different environments. Okay, under this environment, dev is an environment, SIT is an environment, UAT is an environment, prod is an environment, and BCP is a environment. Okay, so this is the development environment where you're going to run your code. And when it is SIT, the very next, what you will be giving for your testers to test that whether it is working fine or not. After the SIT, pre-prod, I mean, it is same like production, but actually not production. But if it is satisfying in Evaluate, because you cannot do your sample testing, etc., in your production. That is the reason, same like production, but actually not production. That is what your UAT environment. So all the production scenarios will be tested here. If it is all good in your UAT, then we will be going with the production, actual live project. Now, what do you mean by business, BCP here, business continuity process? What if like production is down? Somehow, like the production is got some issues and production server is down. So in that case, automatically this BCP servers will come into the picture. They are never live servers. No one is going to make use of them on live. I mean, no one is going to point out to the BCP servers every time. But what they will check is all of a sudden they will try to switch off this production. They are going to do some testing here. All of a sudden they simply switch off this production system. Automatically BCP has to come and serve the customers. Okay, so these are like different environments. Now, before environments, what actually we do is, for example, web application is the project what we have coded. I mean, all the JS files, JSX files, all the expanded version we have. After this web application, we say something called as artifacts. Artifact is a folder. It's a folder with all compiled code. Okay, the non-compiled code is just there only inside your Git. Only in Git you have this non-compiled code. But when you come to your environment, when you come to any of the web server, either it is dev, it's a web server, SIT is a web server, UAT is a web server, prod is a web server, everything is a web server. In fact, when you're running in your local itself is a web server. Local host 5314, 3000, it's all web server where you're running, right? Because I can't run, guys, directly into your browser. Browser needs this JS, HTML, CSS. So even in your local also, when it is getting executed, the artifact is the one, the build file is the one which will be created for you. The build file is the one which is going to get executed in your browser. So when you create this artifact folder, the folder with all the compiled code, this artifact is the one which will be deployed into the dev. Now, I say web application artifact dot something called as 0.1. You know what actually they do is whenever they create the artifacts, they make sure they create a version number. Now you can create multiple versions. I may go, for example, today he compiled it. His feature branch, he compiled it. It is artifact 0.1. His artifact he has compiled, it is 0.3. Someone else has compiled, it is 0.7, something like this. Now this artifact is the final compiled folder which will be taken to the different second environment. Okay, this is the artifact what we have tested. You know, whenever the testers, anyone who is having QE here? No? Okay. So here, whenever the tester is actually testing the application, they will be testing on the specific artifact. Okay, what is the specific zip folder or else the compiled folder what I have tested? They will mention that, okay, the testing, whatever I have done is, this is the artifact what I have tested. If it is fine, this is the artifact which will be moving into the next environment. Okay, so based on this testing status, etc., each artifact will be moving to the next environment, and the artifact, whatever it is, finally saying that okay, all being tested, everything looking good, that is artifact will be deploying into the prod. Now, if you ask me a question, is the JSX file, which is a JavaScript XML compiled, which I mentioned like a piece of code having JavaScript, HTML combined everything. Do you think that that will be deployed into SIT, dev, UAT, prod? No, those files are just there inside your Git, only inside your Git. Okay, so anytime I want to take those things into the server, I compile them. When I compile them, I will build them. When I build them, those are only simple HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, the compiled minified version. That is the artifact which will be deployed into the servers. Now, someone mentioned, okay, after deploying into this web application, this is the artifact what we have deployed. Now, someone said like, Client has done some, asked some changes. Client has asked some changes. Now, if at all I have to do some changes over there, what I'm going to do, I will be doing the changes in the GitHub. I'm not going to do the changes on the artifact, which is the build file. Yeah, I'm not going to add the changes in the artifact because I can't do any changes on the build file. Once the compiled version is there, you cannot do any type of changes. You will be only doing the changes on the source code. Now you again rebuild it, it will be automatically replacing the dist folder. But now, when I'm having this artifact is a compiled version again. So we will be having the versions. After client has suggested changes, we made it as artifact 2 or artifact 3. Now we are deploying that guy into production. What if there is a failure? Something got failure. Okay, your latest release is failing. That is where they take a rollback. Under rollback, what you will mention? This is the existing version. So this is the new version which is recommended to, this is the rollback version. So after this deployment, if there is something an issue, we make sure that whatever the rollback is the previously executing version, we'll make sure that that will be come back again. Are we clear? So anytime the client changes or something issues are there, we will be always doing on the GitHub code what is there. And that is not the code which is not directly going to the server. The JSX file, the compiled SRC, etc. and all, these things will not go to the server. Compiled version will go. Under your CI/CD pipeline, who is going to create this artifact? That is where your DevOps team is going to come into the picture. They configure in such a way that whenever you say, okay, deploy it. Now npm install will be done, npm run build will be done, and that compiled version will be created as a folder, which we call it as a artifacts. Okay. Any questions? I think Ishwar, did I answer your question? Next, what does hash indicate? That is a comment, Swati. That is the standard what they will follow to indicate that it is a comment or title. Okay, then it is required. Correct me if I'm wrong. If package log.json always part of git ignore file? Yes, it is. It is because like what is the use? For example, when I'm doing the package.json, can't you guys create a package log.json? No, no. If I'm giving the package.json, can't you guys create a package log.json? Are you guys creating the package log.json? When it will be created? npm install. When you simply say npm install package log.json is there, then why the reason I'm going to submit inside your Git? Okay. So package log.json is also recommended to not to get included in your GitHub. Hope I'm clear with your question, Swati. Prashant, in local system, it is running on temporary server and port. When we deploy, where we make the server and port details. If you remember, Prashant, I created one of the web server. You see, this is a sample web server I created. Under that public folder, I deployed all my things. Isn't it? So once you have your dist files or dist, uh, uh, what do you say, dist output files, the build files, it is up to you what web server you want to go. Under that, you will be deploying your changes. In my case, I have an idea of Node.js. I just deployed over here. In your case, you might be having an idea of Java server. You deploy the things. Someone else will be having going with .NET server, PHP server, or Python server, depending on the expertise or requirements what you have, you create the particular server and deploy the resources here. Okay? Because these resources are not getting executed by the server. Those resources are just holded by the server. Server is just keeping them. When you ask them, server will throw it back to you. Browser will execute these files within your browser. That is why these all are called as client-side executable files. Clear? Okay. In README file, we can. Uh, I'm not clear on that, Swati. What is that question? Parmeshwar, we can. What is BCP environment? Shafiq, as I mentioned, right? It's a business continuity process. I mean, it's a temporary server, not temporary, actual server they will keep similar to your prod, but that is not going to work every time. It is like, for example, emergency team is there. For example, fire emergency team is there. Do you think that every day they are going to work on? No, they will automatically come into the picture whenever the fire comes there. In the same way, that is a server which is running parallel. Whenever the product is down, BCP will come into the picture. Who is this DR? Where is the DR? Disaster recovery. Where do you see that, Shaif? Okay, BCP. You can mention that. Okay, it is just a replacement whenever the prod is down. Any more questions, Sri? How to create the server, sir? So that thing you guys might be having an idea by this time, but that is fine. Anyway, when I'm going to talk about the Node.js, right? At that time, I'll help you to understand how do we create a web server. Excuse me. Any more questions, guys, before we go forward? Is everyone good? Aja, we are going to learn Node.js as well. At least to the part where we could able to create our own web services that I'm going to cover in this class. The web server which we create, will it be accessible for all? Obviously, right? That is what it is needed. For example, if the web server is not accessible, then how the people will be accessing your resources? That should be accessible for everyone. Prashant, when we deploy on server, it is required to install Node.js. Again, I'm telling you, once we have this dist files, once I do the build, does it need React dependency? Does it need Node dependency? No, it's a plain HTML, CSS, JavaScript. To execute that guy, what is the dependency you needed? You need a browser. So that is the reason I'm saying that after you build that file, you deploy into any of the server, Python server, PHP server, JBoss server, WebLogic server, Apache server, you put into any of the web server. Web servers will never execute the static resource. Web server will throw the resource back to you when you ask them. And they are going to throw it to your browser. Browser understands the HTML and it is executing. Now, when I'm saying that this is my web server, I say CMD, I say npm start. This is my Node.js server, nothing to do with React. What I have done is I took my React files and I took my output files of the React and I deployed into this server. Now, when I say localhost 3000, you see my server is running. These files are running. Do you think that this server is running here? Do you Do you think that my Node.js server is running them? No, Node.js server is throwing you the files. That's it. Where is this HTML coming from? This is from my Node.js server. When I inspect this, when you go to the network, you say all. Once you reload the page, what all the resources are coming here? Okay, what all the resources are coming? One of the HTML file, one of the JS file, one of the SVG file. These resources are coming from one of the CSS file. Now, when I open in a new tab, you see browser, my server, localhost 3000 is simply throwing the CSS. Who is executing them? Browser is executing them. My server is throwing open a new tab. You see this piece of code being thrown from the server, which is localhost 3000. But who is executing the JavaScript? My browser is executing the JavaScript. This guy, if you see the source code of this, so this HTML is coming from localhost 3000. But who is executing? My browser is executing those things. Am I clear? So hope it answered your question. Uh, who asked this? Prashant. Okay, can we say Netlify is also a web server? Obviously, there are lots of web servers, Netlify, Apache, JBoss, WebLogic, etc. and all. Which type of server it is? Which server you're asking, Avinash? Which type of server it is? Web server. It is a web server, right? Okay. Any more questions? All good? Everyone? Good. So now we are so clear with the list of all the piece of, okay, not this guy. AI classes, web application. So we are clear with all the files, all the folders which is getting created here. Now, how do we start this existing? How do we start with newly created React project? So how you are going to start this here? For example, this is the React project what I have created. How do I start this guy? Okay, first thing is we need to go to your command prompt. Okay, go to your CMD. This is what it is saying. Now, under this, I'm going to say npm run dev. Why not npm start? Earlier, I was using, if you see in other command prompt, I was using npm start here. Why the reason? That is a actual node server. That is not a React project. Okay. Whereas coming to the React project, this React project is being built on the top of your white bundler, and he instructed to run your project with something called as npm rundown. If you remember yesterday, I created a project using React scripts also. That guy is built on the top of React script bundler. That guy is again asking npm start only. He's not asking npm run dev. This is the command which is being suggested to go, being suggested by your white bundler. And whenever you say npm run dev, the very first thing who will come into the picture is package.json. User mentioned that npm run dev implies white is the one which has to come. Now, when the white will come, it will automatically identify. First thing what it will execute is it will go into this white config dot. Where is that? White config dot js. For example, if you want to see the flow, I will say console dot log white configuration loaded. I will say ESLint config. I'll say console.log ES configuration got loaded. Okay. Now if you come back, when I say CLS, when I say npm run dev, once you please click on enter here, you see here, what is the first thing which got loaded, boss? White configuration automatically loaded. Why the ESLint has not loaded? Because you have not yet started your application. Once you start writing your application, that guy will be coming, and that guy will be coming into the picture when you say, for example, I say npm run build. When I'm doing this build, you see white configuration got loaded, and where is this ESLint config? npm run dev. Now when I copy this guy, that is not coming into the picture. Yeah, we'll come to that. So the very first one, whenever you say npm start, the first file what is getting identified is package.json. Under the package.json, it has mentioned that, boss, you need to start the white configuration. Automatically white configuration.js is the one which is coming into the picture. There you are mentioning that, okay, boss, the React configuration has to get started. The very next file which gets executed whenever you start your project, whenever you say localhost so and so, you see index.html. This is the guy which is going to get executed. And I mean, whenever I'm saying like localhost 5173, right? The first file which will be automatically coming is index.html. Under the index.html, there is something called as main.jsx. Now, when you go to your main.jsx, it is going to have create root method, get element by ID header. If you remember, these two steps we have already done in our previous project also. What if there is an already existing project and I want to inject the React? When you are injecting the React, we are not injecting the React to the complete page. Instead, piece of DOM module we are saying, under that all the React features will be coming. Now here, I'm simply saying like get element by ID root. If you go into your index.html, do you see there is a file div called as LD root already? So what he is saying, okay, this is the place where the React has to come. For example, if I say something called as div, I say hello, something like a value. Now, do you think that or else I say 20 into 30. Now, when I'm saying this guy, come back to the browser, do you see that 2030 is getting expression is evaluating there? No. Why the reason? It is not part of your React scope. For the React, only scope what we have is div with ID root. How you're telling that? Where you're telling that? We are mentioning that inside your main.jsx file. Under your main.jsx file, we are going to say that, boss, this is the root element under which you need to add this. Now, under the strict mode, we will talk about this. You know, whenever you're compiling the piece of code, there is something called as a strict mode, the developer mode, we call it as. It's an optional one. When you go into the production, strict mode is not at all needed. Then who will remove the strict mode? Whenever you say npm run build, it will make sure to remove the strict mode, then you go forward. If you keep the strict mode, compilation will be done twice. Anyway, I will talk more on this later. But for now, strict mode is optional. Either you give it or don't give it. That works for you. But under the strict mode, I am using one of the component called as app. Okay, one of the component what I'm using is app here. Now, under this app, obviously, where this app is coming, this app is coming from app.jsx file. When I go to the app.jsx file, this thing we are already so clear. This is how you're going to create a component function. What is the name of the component? Finally, export default. Either you can do this or we were doing like this only, right? Earlier, export default, something like this. Okay, this is the component, and you know, under the component, you can declare some variables. He is using some use state and all. We have not discussed at those all the things, and he has given some config, logo, etc. I am removing all this. I say that my code, my React code coming into picture sooner. Save this, come back to the page. This is what your code is there. Earlier, that icon, that logo, etc., they have added. Now you ask me a question, how come it is coming into the center? The CSS already been injected. Okay, if you see here, he has already imported app.css. This is how we import the CSS also into your JSX file. Earlier, we were saying it as .js file only. We never mentioned it as .jsx. But now when we created the project from the scratch, he is mentioning that it should be either JSX or JS file. Both will work for you. Okay. Now when I remove this app.css, you see this is the piece of React code we have added. Still the CSS is coming because under your index.html, we have added, or else under your main.jsx, we have added index.css file. You see, this is the file which is already there. If I comment out that part, now it is your plain code for you to start developing the things. Okay. If we see the flow of this application, flow of the files, flow of running files. So what is the very first command you say? npm run dev. When I do this immediately, what is the file which is coming? What is the file which is coming when I say npm run dev? Package.json. So I say package.json file. Immediately after package.json, white config, white.config.js file. Immediately after that, HTML. It is index.html. Okay. Under that index.html, main.jsx. After the main.jsx, come on. app.jsx. So this is the flow of the files which is getting executed. So when we say npm run dev package.json write config, so this will be done. But later, after you say, now you say local host, what was that? 5173. Then these guys are going to come into the picture. Index.html will come. That is injecting the main.jsx. That is injecting the app.jsx. Now on the top, you keep adding the project. Now when you come into your app.jsx, now you keep adding any of the component you wanted. Now, from the project where we created from the scratch, if I want to create a component, earlier whatever we have created, shall we do that once? Okay, under the SRC folder, I am creating another folder, something called as components. That is recommended. Create a folder called as components, keep your all components inside it. Okay, under that component, I am creating another folder, something called as products. Okay. Now under this products folder, I create one of the file which is called as load products.jsx. JSX is the file where the JavaScript code along with XML format, where your HTML can be injected. Now I say export default function load products is a piece of method what we are going to add. Under this, I'm going to say some return and I say div. Okay. Loading products. Okay. Done. My creation of your component is done. Now you come back to your where this component has to be injected into app.jsx. So here I'm going to say something like load products. This all things have come. Load products. I'm going to copy this under your app. I'm going to say load products. That's it. Okay. But where this load product is coming from, I'm removing all this. I'm not using the React logo, white logo, etc. things. This is how you're going to load the images. I'll comment it out. We'll take it later. What do you mean by this import use state? We are not at all using right now. I will talk about the hooks and all. Now I say import load products from your components under that products under that load product.jsx. Now you save this, come back to your page. Is my load products component is coming for you? This is how simple you create the components inside the project which you started from your scratch. The same thing what we have done earlier also. This is in a different path. That's it. Any configuration, any questions? I think Pallavi, can we modify the name of default files? Name of the default files, white config we cannot modify, but we can modify the remaining all, like the SRC. I mean, obviously SRC folder, anything you want to delete, those all things can be modified. Okay. And one thing is package.json can never be modified. ESLint config cannot be modified. And dist folder also can be modified. We can say that which file we need to, which folder you need to put the dist configuration. Yeah, that's it. I mean, there are some files, not every files, but under public folder, everything can be modified. Am I clear, Pallavi? Swati, why main file? Can I mix it in app file and start? Yeah, it's up to you. What she's saying is, boss, why should I go with the main.jsx file? I want to directly load this. Now, this main.jsx, this is the code what I'm going to have. Now, I want to copy this and I want to directly put it over here. But the problem, very first problem, what we're going to get is this guy has to be loaded as a module. But yeah, if it is module, if you put something called a script, now you say that I don't want to go with this SRC. Okay, I will directly copy this guy and I want to paste it over here. It's up to you because I already mentioned it as type module. Now when I save it, come back, strict mode is going to throw an error. This is the problem. The problem is, but when I say strict mode, it should come. You see, like if I'm making it as internal JavaScript, inline JavaScript, this is the problem. I mean, the problem is this piece of JavaScript code, when you're going into the lint, we have mentioned that those piece of this JS and JS files has to be compiled with all the React features. But we have not mentioned index.html, so that is the reason this is not going to be treated. But under main.js, if you want to load your app.jsx code, that can be done. You see, for example, I don't want to take this as a separate code. You can directly define that component. You can use that component over here. Am I clear, Swati? Next, Ganesh. We are using TS concepts in app.js. Why file extension JS? We are not using TS concepts. Where did you see that in app.js? App.jsx, where do you see that I'm using TypeScript concepts here, Ganesh? Line number, please. For example, if I say something called as var a or name is equal to something called as Raj, is JavaScript or TypeScript? JavaScript, right? I say let name equal to so. So if I put something called as string, this is TypeScript. And when I write TypeScript, it is going to throw me an error. Okay. Hope I'm clear with your question, Ganesh. There is no TypeScript over here. Okay. White config.js is the entry point for the React, not for the React. Here we are using the bundler, right? Entry point for the bundler is white config.js. Under that, now you are mentioning that what is the React? I mean, if you see the React plugin, what we are using is React method. If you see in the white config.js, you see React is the plugin which is getting inside. Am I right? Am I clear, Pallavi? It is not white config. You can say white config is the entry for the bundler of white. What is strict in main.js? Amresh, I already mentioned that. I'll talk about that later. There is a strict mode. I mean, when it is strict mode, it will make sure that the rendering will be done multiple times. At the same time, it will recheck for all the values being binded or not. That will be done, and that is only in the development environment. When you say npm run build, right? It will be removing the strict mode automatically. Anyway, I'll discuss much more on that. Prashant, for routing, can we make changes in index.html, home.html if this we need to make the changes? By default, the configuration, if you see, none of the application we have mentioned that index.html is the one which we need to come. You see, when I say localhost 5173 or slash index.html, you see both are executing one. Now, how come that slash, I mean, without mentioning that index.html, how it is coming? That is how internally it has been configured. I mean, the white bundler live server, whatever the live server is there, that is configured in such a way that whenever user says the server name and the port number, automatically route to the index.html. Or you can directly also say that index.html. But if you say home.html, you need to configure that again. We need to route that. Routing feature will be coming into the picture. If it is index.html, you don't need to. That is internally been added. But it is not mandatory. You say that, no, I will say master.html, I will say home.html, I'll say page.html, you can always do that. But corresponding route has to be defined. If it is index.html, internal configuration automatically defined. Okay. Can we import load product.jsx directly in main.jsx? Yeah, you can do that, right? So under your main.jsx, if you want to say another component here, you can do that. It is not mandatory that under app only. But in general, when I say main, I'm saying that that is a starting point. Main will load the app.js. Now, map app.js is completely responsible for everything. That is what we generally do. But if you say that, no, I will be using this component, where is that? Load product.js. This is the load product. I will be directly loading into your map or main.jsx. You can always do that. I have to say import load products from so and so. You can do that. Save this guy, reload it. You see, this load products got loaded twice. One from your app.jsx, one from your main.jsx. It's not mandatory that it has to be up, but this is the general structure we follow in our real time. Even in our organizations, whenever you go, everything will be loaded into your app. App will be loaded into the main. Okay. Hope I'm clear with your question, Amrish. Swati, why main and app files are JSX type and any specific reason? Come on, Swati. The reason why we are going with the JSX is because it is having the JavaScript code along with the HTML content, right? If you see, I'm not writing only the JS logic here. To mention that this is the piece of code where I'm writing, do you think this can be done in your normal JS file? No, right? Am I clear, Swati? That is what we discussed in your, features of your React, right? Ritu. If we are able to write all the HTML code and JS code in JS file, then why do we go with the JSX file? Not possible, right, Ritu? If I copy this piece of code, okay, if you say that why only JSX, why can't be it as JS, you can still do that. That is what we have done in our previous code. It is not mandatory, but it is recommended by looking, in future, we will be writing some compiled, some common JS file also. You see, under the components, I'm going to create one file, something called as common.js file. Under that, I say function, something called as add values. Okay, I say function, something called as get emp details. Okay, I say function, something called as some sample. Like this, I'm writing this piece of method. Do you have any JSX code here? No, it is a piece of utility methods I have defined in one single file that can be used here. Now, if I make everything as .js, how do you differentiate between the file which is having JavaScript and HTML, and how do you differentiate between the file which is having only the JavaScript methods? Am I clear? To differentiate that, we generally go with JSX. It's not mandatory. Because earlier, whatever the JSX code I have created, I have not used the JSX. I made it as .js only. If you see our previous code, when you go to your December 11th, our existing web application under SRC components, you see product details. This is all the JS code what we have added. Product details.js. It is .js file only, but we are adding the JSX. So it's not mandatory, but it is recommended so that to separate between this. Clearly too. Can you remove white logo from title? Yeah, if it is already there in index.html, right? You see, this is where we have added. Are you not interested with that logo? You want me to remove or you want to test that whether it will work or not? You can always test this. I mean, you can put your own SVG code. It is there inside your HTML. Okay. Yeah, obviously, if you want to remove, you can just remove this guy. That's it. Madhuri, is there is any routing mechanism in React? There are any routing file in React app? Right now, it is no Madhuri, but it is possible to implement the routing feature. Okay, React also support, I mean, React by default doesn't support the routing feature, but we have routing external library, React routing, using which we can implement routing. Okay, we will do that. Nagmani. If we can call the products in the main JSX, what is the reason of using app.jsx? That is what I mentioned, right, Nagmani? For example, let us take a practical example. I have a big home which I constructed. Under that, I have a kitchen, I have my bedroom, I have some living room. Why the reason you're constructing as a home? Can't you put in one corner, you put all your kitchen utilities. One corner, you put all your bedroom utilities or bedroom things. One corner, you put all your living room like sofa, etc. Can we do that? We can, but why the reason I'm organizing in a separate room, saying that this is all belong to so and so. Okay, that is just a path what they're following. That main is the actual component gets loaded. Under that app is the component which gets loaded. Now app is the one which is having actually having the application content. So only for that sake it is, but as I have already shown you, for example, here, if I remove this app, am I getting out of this app here? No, only main.js6 is the one which is coming for you. Am I clear, Nagmani? Okay. Make function name starts with caps. Why? Why do you want to do that, Avinash? Do you want to make the function name as caps? It's not mandatory. Only if it is a component, we need to go with a uppercase. Right? For example, I'm writing one of the utility method. It is not at all mandatory. No, not at all mandatory to go with this uppercase, right? Common.js. Right now it might be showing, but it is fine. I can still go with this. I can still go with this method names. It is saying that it is defined, but never used. It is not throwing any error for that. Okay. For example, if I call this add values here, my job is done. That's no issues. It's not mandated that all the function names should start with uppercase. Only the component you have a rule for that. Shivangi, for routing, we need to create a separate folder. Actually, yes. Right now, we are not discussing anything about the routing. Once I go for that, I'll show you, Shivangi. Parmeshwar, strict mode helps in finding. As I said, strict mode I'll be discussing later. Can you please showcase hierarchy once as I didn't get Git access? And one more thing, guys, Git access, I know that it's creating a problem. Who is having access of the Git access in offline? You already have Git access, right? You both have it. Yesterday, I asked you guys before leaving, get access for the GitHub. No one waited. You just went off. So hurry in getting out of the class. Yes. Yesterday, did I mention for at least for the offline students before leaving the class? I was sitting and I was waiting who will come to me and ask for the Git access. No one is interested. He is the one who has come and asked for the Git access, and she is the one who has come and asked for the Git access. Not just yesterday, day before itself. And I already gave them. That is where I'm seeing the interest towards. And in online, I see a lot of people are pinging me saying that boss, I need Git access. So that is how interest. Okay. Offline, whoever is part of our Telegram group, official Telegram group, you please come. Can you take the job of after you go home, once you check out the code, please zip it and at least send in your our Telegram. At least for some days until this weekend, I will for sure finish it out all the GitHub access for everyone. But up to then, you can help us in providing that zip code. Okay. Okay. Next. Narendra, I'll just showcase that again. Anyway, like you will be getting that Git content in the message in the Telegram today. Madhuri, can you please add React lifecycle in your running node details? It may ask in your interview. In fact, I'm already adding entry, all those entries, whatever you're discussing, Madhuri. What is the life cycle of loading of this? I have not yet come to the life cycle of your component. There is a different question, life cycle of the component, but I have discussed about how the app is coming into the picture. I have already added. Okay. I'll make sure, guys. Anything, whatever is being discussed in the class, running notes, elaboratively, I will add it. If I miss anything, please remind me. Now, everyone is so clear. If I just ask you, can you create a simple React application from the very scratch with a hello world component getting rendered? Can you guys do that now? Everyone is confident? Anyone say that no, still any gaps? And with a clear picture, you also, it is not like I'm just adding hello world. With a clear picture, right? What is coming on the starting, what is later getting rendered, etc. stuff, everything. And if you want, you can even do the data binding, etc. stuff also, right? I'm coming into the main.js6. I'm again loading this app here, this load products. And now you're coming to the load products. You know that these are all data binding stuff. I say var name is equal to Mr. Raj. If at all I have to render this guy on the UI, I can simply say the name. Now, once you come back to the page, you should be able to see that name is getting binded. What it is called as? What it is called as? Data binding, man. Isn't it? Okay. Now, okay, data binding. Already. Amresh, already done. Very good. So I want everyone today you practice this of creating your own project, take your own details and create this component. That will be fine for me. And inject your own CSS also. You already know how do we inject, right? For example, this product details want this own individual CSS under this load products. Now under this, you can simply create a new file. I say products dot CSS. Okay, under this product.css, I say some div, in the sun say some border, 2 pixel solid. I say border radius, say some 2 pixel background color, something called as yellow. Come back. Is it is coming? No. Why the reason? You have not imported. Once you define the CSS, you need to import that guy in the component. I say import product dot CSS. Come back here. Application is having its own CSS. Are we clear? And one more thing. What if I want to load an image? What if I want to load an image? If you see under your app.jcss, you can already see this import so and so. In the same way, let us get some image also. Say some mobile. I want to load one of this image. This image I want to load it. Open image in new tab. Come back. Save image as. Okay, better. I copy this. Under the desktop, I have images. Under images, I see some camera image. I copy this guy. If you don't want, you can give it to me. Okay, I copy this camera image. Let's go into under products, or else let's go into the assets. I'll keep it inside your assets so that all the images will be added into your assets folder. Okay, let me rename this as camera.jpg. Now, how you're loading this image here? Let us go into your product details. Now, what I'll say is import camera image from assets and camera. You see, I mean, you can put whatever name you want. I can say something called as Prasad also. I mean, it is just a alias name what I'm giving for this image. Okay. Now I say camera. Okay. Now you copy this. Let us say something called as img src is so and so. Is it is right valid fragment? Is it is a right valid fragment? No. It has to be having a single parent, right? So and so. Save this guy. Come back over here. Let's go back to your application. Why it is an issue? Does the file exist? Yeah, it is existing, right? Camera.jpg. Okay. Dot slash assets under assets camera.jpeg. JPEG. Now, once you come back, you see this is how you're loading images. You see, this is the magic what you could able to see. Under the JS code, you could able to import the external CSS file, external images also. General, it is not at all possible in your normal JavaScript. But who is making this possible? React is giving that facility. You write in this way, but if I give directly this guy to the browser, doesn't work. But I will make sure to give how the browser has to know. React will take care of it. Okay. Any questions up to on this? So can we keep image in a public folder and access? We can do that, Abhishek, but in general, right? It is recommended that all your external files, including the CSS also, it is recommended to keep in assets. I mean, corresponding, what do you say? Corresponding CSS of the particular component, yes, you can keep it over here, but anything which is common, JS images or CSS, recommended to keep in assets, but there is no harm. There is no stopper to keep inside the public. Okay. If you say, can't we keep in public, you can still do that. Any more questions? Everyone is good up to here? Okay. Now, do we use Tailwind here? We can, but I will be going with the Bootstrap here instead of Tailwind. Bootstrap we will be discussing. At the same time, React Material UI also will be discussing. Because when you go with your React, right? Sorry, when you go with the Bootstrap, right? For example, Bootstrap, for example, if at all you go with this Bootstrap, docs and components, accordion. For example, I want to go with something called as accordion here. So if at all I want to have this look and feel, I need to copy this complete HTML of this accordion. I need to keep this guy under your load product.js. You see here, I'm pasting this. This is a very big confusion for me. I mean, this much of hell lot of HTML code I'm copying from the Bootstrap and keeping here. And if you see, the accordion is not loading fine. Why the reason? Bootstrap CSS is not loaded. So Bootstrap CSS, I will be loading in your main.js6. Agree or not? Bootstrap, is it is specific for component or specific for the application? Application, right? Complete web application, I wanted this Bootstrap. That is the reason I'll be loading directly inside your main.jsx itself or app.jsx. It's up to you. Now uh, I say import dot slash or dot slash node module slash bootstrap dist and bootstrap mini dot css file. In the same way, I say import node modules bootstrap bundle dot mini dot js. I'm loading bootstrap mini css file, bootstrap mini js file. Now once you save it, come back, reload the page. Now you see accordion is loading. Is this accordion we have created or we are using the bootstrap accordion? Bootstrap accordion. This is how simple we can inject Bootstrap to your React application. I'm simply just copying the HTML from your React and I'm including this Bootstrap into this guy to your main.js file. But the problem what we see is, boss, when you're copying the Bootstrap, it's like too much of HTML content what I'm copying. Isn't it? Too much of HTML content what I'm copying from the Bootstrap. But now that is the reason what Bootstrap guy has done. He has come up with something called as React Bootstrap. So I am not going to give the complete HTML. Instead, I will give you a component. If at all you want to use this guy, you see what I'm, for example, if at all this component, same component, React Bootstrap component, we have just ended. Now what we need to do is, instead of that main HTML, you see accordion is a component he is giving. He has created a component called as accordion itself. He has created a component called as, for example, this breadcrumbs. Okay, he has created components, not like this div guy, etc. and all. He has given these components. I will discuss this maybe in the tomorrow's class. Tomorrow I'm going to take the like revised class, right? Or the backup, whoever have missed it. So, but later then I'm going to show you. We are going to create the project first of all. As I said, you static project will create. Either we can go with the Netflix or we go with Amazon, whatever it is. I'll show you how do we create static. Then we will start looking into the hooks, etc. things and all. But at least, and later I will even show you how do you add this React component, React Bootstrap components into your project. In fact, now we could able to do that. I could able to use this React components getting loaded. But the thing is, problem with that much of HTML. You see, this much of HTML, almost like 50 lines of code what we are adding. But if we go with same thing, we will be going with just these many lines. You see, this is the accordion body. This is the accordion item, accordion body. This thing we can. I will discuss about this. How do we do? Any questions before we close this? Please add us to access the Git repository you created. Obviously, I'll do that, Parmesh, as I mentioned, right? It was delay from my side only, not getting enough time. But by this weekend, I'll make sure I'll finish it out. Okay. Sukanya, can you please add me to the Telegram group? Nagmani, it is better you can message her directly in the WhatsApp so that she will reply fast. Can someone share running notes in the group? I don't have access. Sure, Madhuri, as I mentioned, like there is one offline. Good name? Good name. Prashant. So Prashant will be helping us in sharing whatever the code, right? Complete zip he is going to share inside our group. Okay, so that up to by the time you get access, you won't be getting you won't be a blocker. Okay. Let's pause it for today, guys. We'll meet again back on tomorrow. And offline students, whoever, I mean, I'm